When I first started Dragon Ball Dissection, I made it clear that I was evaluating the series based on what I considered the most logical divisions of its story arcs. And if you disagree with me, well, you're obviously wrong, and I have no desire to discuss how wrong you are. But anyway, we have now made it through 3 of the 10 Dragon Ball story arcs. That said, doing this series has, naturally, required me to think a lot about Dragon Ball. And doing so has made me realize that those story arcs can be further condensed into what I would consider eras. This has less to do with storytelling and more about narrative and a time period, and less tangibly a tone, a mood, something that evokes a particular time and place. Based on that, I consider us having now reached the second era of Dragon Ball. Obviously, the fact that the story has skipped ahead 3 years makes it a pretty good dividing line. Everything in the series prior to this time skip has been continuous action. More than that, though, the first 3 story arcs captured the tone and feeling of early Dragon Ball with its focus on a mix of martial arts and comedy. Finally, the era we just left focuses mainly on the same group of characters. Most of the main cast has been the same since the first story arc, and only 2 more members of the group have been added since then, and still very early on. And since lunch is so minor most of the time, it's mainly been the original cast and Kuririn. Now that we're entering the second Dragon Ball era, a lot is going to change. The cast is going to be substantially expanded for the first time, the mythology of the world is going to be explored much more in depth, and the tone is going to begin significantly darkening. And as an illuminating indicator as to how different the 2 eras are, consider their structure. The first era was comprised of 2 Dragon Ball adventures with a tournament in between. This era, however, will feature 2 tournaments that bookend a catastrophe on a global scale. And ringing in this new era is a triumphant reunion of our heroes, now older, wiser, and with some amazing new tricks up their sleeves. The story begins on an air panic plane, on which the entire group, sans Goku, is traveling to the 22nd Tenkaichi Budoukai. Kuririn and Yamcha are bragging about their new skills, the turtle sending is hitting on stewardesses, and Lunch wants to hijack the plane. There are a few things I love about this teaser, as well as the title image a couple of pages in. It's so exciting to me to see the characters at their new ages with their new looks, and maybe because it's the first time, I find this one more satisfying than any other. Placed in context of the series, it really makes you feel like you've been with this group for a long time. Plus, I really enjoy the new designs of Bluma and Yamcha, and I even like the subtle changes in regards to Kuririn and Goku. I have to bring this up again. I was introduced to this part of the series through Curtis Hoffman's manga summaries, and he made quite a point to say that Goku didn't change at all in the 3-year gap, but I have to say that's really not true. He and Kuririn certainly don't look like standard 15 and 16-year-olds, but they both matured considerably. In fact, my favorite example Toriyama gives of this is when he basically replicates a panel from the first tournament of the characters putting their uniforms on. You can really see the difference between 12-year-old Goku and 15-year-old Goku. I also love how much more like a group the characters feel now than in the last tournament. As I said, the first era focused on these characters. In the first arc, we were introduced to most of them. In the second arc, we were introduced to the rest. And in the third arc, they really came together. And so rather than just having the Muten, Roshi, and the boys traveling here as a group, everybody is now included, even the Sea Turtle. This is the only time he's ever included in a tournament trip. It's also becoming increasingly apparent that the evil side of Lunch is able to coexist with the other characters without attempting to kill them, so even she's fully acclimated to the group. Granted, my personal idea on this subject is that, as I've gone out of my way to bring up at every opportunity, Lunch is a boring character. That is to say, her shtick of changing between nice and violent gets boring fast. However, a character who is constantly shooting guns, threatening violence, and basically acting rude and obnoxious is pretty funny all on its own, and much more interesting than her other form. So I'm not surprised that Toriyama basically seemed to just keep her in that form nearly all the time from now on. All he had to do was tone her down a bit so she'd actually be willing to come along for the ride, and we're kinda left with a Lunch 2.0. She's still not the most interesting or integral character, but I can see Toriyama trying for a saving role on this one. The characters scramble to get to the grounds and register on time, including Jackie Chun, and all the while they're wondering if Goku will make it before the registration closes. However, just then the antagonists of this arc make their appearance. Now that all the cast is on the same side and all the fighters are officially part of the Kame school, it makes sense that Toriyama would introduce a rival martial arts school. And so we have Tsuru Sennin and his disciples, Ten Shinhan and Chaozu. The Turtle and Crane Masters have long since hated each other, and their twisted reflections of each other are obvious. Ten Shinhan and Chaozu form one of the most well-known big guy little guy duos in Dragon Ball, but what might not be readily apparent is that they're also twisted dark versions of Yamcha and Kuririn, and will become immediately paired up with their twins. Yamcha has his moments of arrogance, Ten Shinhan is cocky to the extreme, Kuririn is short and bald, Chaozu is even shorter and has just one hair. After they depart vowing to show up the Turtle School, Yamcha suggests that Puar transform into Goku and register for him, but that would actually require Puar to be useful again, which isn't going to happen, so Goku arrives. Clad in animal skins and sporting a new tail, he claims to have swum here from a place called Yahoi, which is on the opposite side of the world. He hasn't seen Kinton in 3 years because, true to his word, he'd been traveling the world on foot. After they all get suited up and enter the gymnasium, Goku and the others get a lot of attention from competitors who recognize them from last time. Through sheer coincidence with story convenience, none of the four get put in the same block in the preliminaries. Yamcha and Kuririn easily make it through their first matches and are quite proud of themselves, which leaves them open for Ten Shinhan to come over and taunt them for it. Kuririn thinks the three-eyed guy will go down quickly, but Goku, having just met him, knows he's going to be good. And sure enough, Ten Shinhan ends his first match so quickly that no one but Goku, Kuririn, and Yamcha could even see what he did. We don't even get to see Chaozu's preliminaries because, well, it seems Toriyama brought him in as an analog for Kuririn and didn't really think him through any farther than that. Goku begins his first match and he's paired up against King Choppa. Yamcha's knowledge about absolutely everything in the Dragon Ball world begins pouring out of his mouth once more, and we get the exposition that King Choppa once won an entire Tenkaichi Budoukai without receiving a single hit. Jackie appears and agrees with Yamcha that Goku has gotten himself in a pickle. But King Choppa, like Akuman before him, exists only to prove that Goku has gotten much, much stronger. Choppa breaks out his Hashuken, or Fist of 8 Arms, which is important because it'll come up later. As an aside, Choppa is a pun on chapati bread. Choppa thinks Goku has made a blunder in leaping into the sky and bouncing off the ceiling, but Goku uses his breath to slow his fall enough to miss Choppa's punch and knock him out of the ring. Goku laments he can't yet fight strong guys like Jackie and the others, and they just hope Goku doesn't realize yet how hopelessly outmatched they've become, so they can remain relevant in the story for a little while longer and not be passed over for stronger characters. But unsurprisingly, all four make it through the preliminaries, and the 182 contestants are whittled down to 8 finalists. After a little interlude with the other characters, the four meet up for the lottery where they find that the Crane students have also made it into the finals. Yamcha and Kuririn banter with their counterparts before the announcer shows up to assign the order. For the first time, we get to see a hint of Ten Shinhan and Chaozu's personalities and abilities. Chaozu has telekinetic powers, which Ten Shinhan tells him to use to arrange the matches how he wants them to be. For example, Ten Shinhan insists he fight Yamcha, so Chaozu puts them together. He also notices that the furry guy, who is a man-wolf, not a wolf-man, is really angry with Jackie, so he has Chaozu pair them up. And Goku embarrasses the rest of the turtle team by being really impressed that the announcer can guess what number he's going to draw, when he's the last person to draw. Chaozu doesn't get it. So the tournament begins, the dog-like priest from the last time is never seen again, and the first match is a grudge match between Yamcha and Ten Shinhan. Fans of these characters consider this fight to be a shining moment for both of them, and I've heard people refer to this as one of their favorite early Dragon Ball fights. And it is pretty good. They both show off some really impressive moves, and Toriyama's artwork is really exciting. He needs to draw characters angular to depict speed, my butt. Yamcha even shows that he's become the next character to master the Kamehameha. Unfortunately, this is Yamcha, and Yamcha exists for 2 purposes: to give exposition, and to be beaten up to show how powerful the new character is. And since he already did the expositing, now it's time for the latter. After Yamcha's already incapacitated, Ten Shinhan breaks his leg just to show off what a jerk he is. Puar transforms into a flying carpet to take Yamcha to the hospital, and Bluma and Lunch follow along. This does a really good job of setting up a main villain in this tournament format. He's not a megalomaniac trying to take over the world, but he's a dirty fighter, and with Goku now taking Yamcha's place as Ten Shinhan's rival, we're really eager to see Ten go down. What I don't like about it, though, is that it removes half the cast from the story for the rest of the arc, and this is really early on. After the match, Ten Shinhan muses that Yamcha was probably the best the Turtle School had to offer, and that with him gone, Ten Shinhan will be the champion and Chaozu the runner-up. You know, the closest between these two characters is one of Dragon Ball's most famous pairings, but here Ten Shinhan seems to be treating Chaozu much more like a lackey than anything else. Match 2 between Jackie and Man-Wolf is one of the few not to be connected to the main story, and is played mainly for comedy, but even it is actually tied into continuity. You see, Man-Wolf reveals that he has a vendetta against Jackie for blowing up the moon in the last tournament. He's the opposite of a wolfman in that he's normally a wolf, but transforms into a man at the full moon, but now that there's no moon, he can't become a man anymore, and had to stop seeing a pretty woman he'd been dating. Man-Wolf tries to avenge himself, but Jackie's way out of his league. Meanwhile, Goku and Kuririn notice that Tenshinhan and Chaozu have the ability to levitate in the air, meaning there probably won't be any out-of-bounds wins against those guys. Obviously, in a long-term sense, this is the first appearance of the Buku Jutsu technique, or art of skydancing, that most every fighting character will eventually adopt after this point, although how it differs from, say, what Puar has been doing for the entire series is somewhat unclear. We really won't get any kind of explanation as to how Buku Jutsu works until near the end of the series. Man-Wolf doesn't care about breaking the rules and pulls a knife, which still doesn't do him any good, but Jackie offers to turn him back into a human. But he first humiliates him by treating him like a dog, which actually works. And then he coerces him out of bounds by throwing a bone. Jackie claims to have to use a pressure point to hold Man-Wolf in place since he won't listen to his offer, but come on, Jackie's just being a jerk here. But now that Man-Wolf is held in place, Jackie brings Kuririn down and uses hypnosis to convince Man-Wolf that Kuririn's bald pate is the full moon. It works, and Man-Wolf permanently becomes a very ugly man, leading Jackie and Kuririn to think he was better off the way he was before. But Man is pleased and leaves to chase after girls. And much to his chagrin, the announcer calls on Full Moon Kuririn to start the next match.